offers you that hangout option if you're trying to do a conference call or a video conference call. They've been talking about this a while, I think.
Yeah, I've been hearing this for a long time because we used to use, like back in the day, we used to use Google Hangouts as our video conferencing system when we first, started introducing our other offices, and it actually never really worked very well.
Yeah.
And so I'm not surprised that they are phasing it out because I don't think a lot of users are using it, and I don't think that it's working the way they want it to function. So I would assume this new version that they're going to be rolling out after is going to be hopefully a new and improved version.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people typically use Zoom. That one gets a lot of really good reviews. People like it a lot. And so part of what's happening with all of that is they do have the G Suite that we are all familiar with so far. And so the change is planning on putting several services together into one place. And so that's going to be, creating a platform for corporate grade enterprises on G Suite. So they're really aiming for, we know businesses need this, and let's keep them, they're already using our Gmail, they're already using our Docs, let's keep them all together in one place. And I think that's convenient, but
yeah, they basically want to be the new Microsoft Office.
Yep.
Or, where everyone does everything in that one place, where you can chat with your coworkers. Like, they want to pull a little bit from the social media networks. They want people to use their document system and their Drive system now, so kind of pulling from Dropboxes and, initial idea there. So I get it, and they want to be that one spot, and they probably, as long as it works the way that we want it to work as consumers, I would imagine that this will work out for them because Gmail's already people's go-to. We even see it here at work. We've really transitioned over from using Microsoft Office more to the Drive. And so I would imagine if this video conferencing system works well too, a lot of businesses will move over to that.
Yeah.
And there is a clever thing about taking a specific platform down because, like you just said, Google Hangouts already has a bad reputation, so coming out with a new and renewed product also means that it might work better and you give it a second try.
Yeah, and instead of just saying, we have a new version of Google Hangouts, we're getting rid of that.
Yeah,
we're doing something different.
I would never use that at this point. I've been burned too many times by Google Hangouts, so.
I remember when they were first advertising, it was literally supposed to be Hangouts, you and your friends were supposed to be chatting on it. I was like, who's doing that? That was a while ago when they first launched it.
And FaceTime came out.
Exactly, and they're like, no, we're good, we don't need that either. So next up is Pinterest. This is something else that I've been hearing about for a while, is they are rolling out their first version of their augmented reality tool. This was initially a conversation they started announcing. The plan is it's going to be really good for cosmetics companies. The idea is that you can hold it up to your face while you're in Pinterest, and it'll show you what this makeup is going to look like on your face. They are starting specifically with lipstick only. But a cool thing that they're going to have you do is you can actually search by your skin tone, and then it'll give you versions of that lipstick, either that's meant to look good on your or look best on your skin tone, or how it's going to, and kind of give you similar search features, and it narrows it down for you.
The first thing I thought of with this is that Instagram is going to borrow this idea so quickly.
Immediately.
Because we've seen that already be kind of a trend when some of these other social media platforms have an idea like this and then it pops up on Instagram a little bit later, even some kind of a new improved way. Instagram already kind of has that integrated into, with the filters and the stories, and even Kylie Jenner has a filter where it puts different lipsticks on you. So I already see that being a thing with Instagram. Plus, on top of that, they're really trying to roll out the Instagram shopping and trying to make that a bigger thing. So I just think it's a matter of time before Instagram really takes this and runs with it. And we'll see if, I think Pinterest will have its market, but I think we'll be talking about it in a couple months about how Instagram has the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to your point, I think if you do have a cosmetics product, or if you are currently selling online, start to figure out how this whole augmented reality world works, because I've seen it now with furniture. It's almost standard that you can put the furniture in your room through augmented reality. It's at some point it's going to be really hard to sell someone if they can't see it in real life.
Try it in real life. Yeah, clothing options. I could also see that being maybe the next market they go after.
Right.
Yeah. So just keep it in mind.
That is really. We all do so much online shopping now, and that's really something that is the only hesitation that I ever have is when I'm buying something. I was like, okay, what's the quality? How's it doing? And I have to go look up reviews and stuff, but if it's something that I physically want to see on my face and see how it goes without purchasing it, that could be interesting.
I think there's also a lot to say about being the first, or one of the first, to really, take on this challenge and be really good at it. Be the first makeup company that has this option. I think that getting ahead of it, and if you're in that type of industry, I think there's a lot of advantages to being the first one that does it.
And like you said, if it's going to roll out and we know it's going to end up on other platforms,
Yeah.
you're like, cool, I already do this. I can just roll it out to other places.
Yeah, and it's a good way to get some PR.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
Be the one doing it.
It's true. It's a good way to go. See, we just tie it all back in together. And then last on our list for this week for news is something that people should probably know about is Facebook has an off Facebook activity section. So something that not everybody knows, but when you are, using your phone and your apps, a lot of your apps will run in the background without you realizing it's doing it. And Facebook does this. And so, there is a trail that follows you around. It's like when you look in one app and you get an ad, and then another app and you get the same ad. These are the kinds of things that they're tracking. And following the scandal with Cambridge Analytica, Facebook has been trying to be really transparent about what data they're collecting and letting you know that there's tools for you to use. And one of these things is you can clear data from your account. You can actually go in and get rid of it and say, in kind of the same way, like when you're being targeted for certain ads, you can go and find out what your likes are, like what does it think that you like. You can clear out some of those. And so their solution for, in particular with when you're not on Facebook and then tracking that information, is the off Facebook activity page. It doesn't mean they're going to stop collecting all of your data from you, but it does mean that they're not going to necessarily do it while you're not using Facebook. The idea is trying to eliminate that fear that you're being followed everywhere by Facebook. But kind of briefly, you guys mentioned, what does this mean if you're a business who's running ads?
Yeah, as a marketer, you really don't want people to know about this option because it is a lot easier. It's just kind of like marketing 101. It's easier to sell to someone who knows about you than it is to sell to someone who's never heard of your brand before. So the idea of being able to target people who've already been to your website once before makes our job a little bit easier and more effective what we do. So to have someone be able to clear that out, it could be concerning for marketers who really rely on this technology.
Yeah, but to play devil's advocate, you can have people starting to delete only pieces of their information, and then that way the data becomes more accurate.
Which is true.
Remember a few, I think months ago now, Instagram showed you secretly how to go check out like what they think you're interested in. It was a list of about 20 items and like space and like really random things were on my list that I generally believe I'm not interested in, but now I'm being targeted based on those criteria. So there could be a shift happening where shoppers are actually becoming more well-versed in what Facebook is tracking about them and then adjusting it accordingly.
Yeah, and I can see it being helpful on the consumer side to clear out, because that always happens to you when you just needed to look something up, and then now all of a sudden they won't stop sending you printer ads, and you're like, I'm not looking to buy a printer, but they just keep sending you ads and keep sending you ads. From the consumer side, if I could just hit a button and immediately kind of start over, that would make my experience and user experience better. And then therefore maybe I would use the platforms more often and just be more active on the platform.
So hopefully that'll give us more information and more things to, just narrowing down of if somebody's really interested in it and they remove other things, then you are getting stronger leads out of that if those ads are going to the right people. So you're right, it's good and it's bad. You don't necessarily want people to know if they're really a good target for you. And
we never know how these things are really going to roll out. It's like just because the capability is there doesn't mean that people are going to use it. But then there are also on the flip side, random tools that kind of blow up, or the news kind of takes a hold of it and then everyone kind of jumps on it. So this could be something that they roll it out and no one even notices that it comes out and then no one even utilizes it. Or it could be something where masses of people are trying it and using it and it becomes a news story. And we'll just kind of wait and see.
Facebook's been rolling out this security stuff a while now, so they're just always on it, which is good. Thank you. So next up, we're going to have a little bit about MailChimp. What have you got to say about that?
Yeah, so MailChimp, if you've never heard about it, it's a web-based email marketing system that lets you basically input your list and send emails out to people to maintain relationships with them and to essentially market to them. This is just one of the more popular platforms. A couple other ones you might have heard of before would be Constant Contact, Infusionsoft. What people like about MailChimp, I think, and what makes it so popular is that it's so user-friendly. You don't have to have really any background experience. And we kind of wanted to share a little bit about segmenting your audience. And I think this can really basically take it from how I just explained, the basic use of MailChimp, kind of bump it up a level and, a little bit more towards, expert status here, but still something that everybody can do for their own businesses. So you don't have to be an expert to be able to segment your audience. So what we mean by segmenting is essentially going to be filtering and dividing your contacts based on different bits of information that you know about them. You can choose either one single condition, so you could say, I want to segment my audience by people who purchased from me before versus people who've never purchased from me before. Then you'd have two different segments. You'd have your audience of people who are repeat buyers and then people who have maybe given you their contact information but you've never purchased from them before. And the idea is that your messaging to those people are going to be very different. The way that you market to someone who knows about you, who's heard about you before, has purchased your item before, is going to be really different from someone who you're still trying to nurture that relationship and still trying to convince them to purchase from you. So even that's like the very basics. If you segment into those two different audiences, you could have two simultaneous campaigns going with very different messaging. Then to kind of layer on top of that, you can actually add within MailChimp up to 5 different conditions, maybe saying, someone who's purchased before but in the last 90 days and really narrow down. You can go into MailChimp and kind of experiment with what different options they have in there. But you can have multiple different lists, which it's very, small tweaks. It's not like you need to rewrite your entire copy over and over again, but you can really tweak your messaging to really narrow in how you want to advertise or to market to those different audiences.
Yeah, and to your point, even if you don't necessarily change the copy of the email, the fact that you're sending it to more specific groups, you can start to figure out who is your warmest audience. Are they making larger purchases after their second purchase?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and those right there are a couple different examples. Like maybe you narrowed it down to people who spent over X amount of dollars on your website. And have purchased versus people who spent less than this much on the website. Maybe the different, the ways that you approach your conversation to them, the way you talk about pricing could be very different. You could, narrow out between business owners and businesses as a whole. If like one is going to the CEO versus one that's just going to their marketing team. You could, really narrow it. There's lots of different ways to do it. It's just about doing it strategically rather than just uploading your entire list of 150,000 emails. Half of which you haven't talked to, since 2006 or something, and then just hoping that your messaging works for them. This is about learning every month and then adjusting from there and taking what you know about that audience and being really strategic about how you talk to them, both with your visuals in the ads or in your newsletters and also in the copy.
Do you have any advice for like A/B testing different emails? Like, would you recommend that? And what size list would you say that makes sense on?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend doing it. I just think it's important to keep some things consistent. I think when people A/B test or try to test different things and they try to change too much at once, it's hard to learn from that and to know what is actually working. Like the whole point of doing the A/B test is to, at the end of the test, have some sort of knowledge from that to then be able to apply that to the next month.
Right.
Where if you have, you segment your list, but then you have completely different messaging and, you're testing different creatives and headlines, and copy and offers, you're going to have no idea why one list purchased versus the other list.
Right.
Like, there's virtually no way to tell.
It should be as simple as like the call to action is stated differently, or an image is different in it. Like really simple things that you can go, okay, this performed better, and the only difference was this one element.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I would think from there. And like I said, for an example, you may have this list of, let's say, like 150,000 people, but maybe for whatever reason, a large chunk of those people came to you from a really long time ago. Maybe you've rebranded since then. Maybe you've been looking at your list and you can see that the same 1,000 people are always opening and engaging with your emails, but there's a big chunk of those people who don't open it at all, or they don't click through at all. You can kind of come up with a campaign to then re-engage those more inactive subscribers, and those people need their own messaging completely, because those people are now no longer interested in what you're offering. They're practically a cold audience. Maybe they've heard of you, but for whatever reason they're not engaging. So you need a completely different strategy to be able to market to those people. And then keeping in mind that those people, that is going to be a longer term strategy, maybe a more expensive strategy if you're including advertising in your campaign, where the people who engage really often, those people are much closer to purchasing from you than your colder audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean, we even see this, and we're kind of talking about like purchasing things, but I think there's other ways to do it. Like if you're in a service industry, you can segment it out by, I have these people who just come to me for knowledge and education, and maybe they're not a direct client of mine, but I'm sending out this newsletter every month or what it may be. But then you also have your other ones of, these are my clients, these are people who I always talk to, and I want to engage with them regularly, whatever that may be. So like we happen to use a lot of like their purchasing, but this applies, the same kind of things can be applied to if you are a service industry as opposed to someone who's selling a product.
Yeah, I think your business model really plays into how you utilize your list, because there's a big difference between a type of business where you have repeat customers. They're going to need you all the time. They want to purchase from you. They want to continue using your service to do whatever it might be. On the flip side, you could be an attorney and you help them get divorced, but that typically is going to be something someone only needs once, maybe twice.
Right.
And they're not going to need your services for that specific thing over and over and over again. So a way you can still utilize that audience is segmenting those people who you have worked with before, and maybe now you're talking about referrals and recommending you. Like that language is so different than your list of people who you have never worked with before and might need you one day when you're in that circumstance. But their messaging is 100% different.
Yeah. Cool. Good. Well, there you go. That's just like the basics. And so, you know, like she said, none of this is really difficult. It's next level, maybe advanced, but it's not out of reach. It's absolutely something you can do. And MailChimp and Constant Contact, there's a lot of them out there that give you all of those tools up front and have a lot of information online, even outside of what the blogs that we write, that say, okay, here's how you do it. So just keep that in mind. That's really good if you're doing email marketing. It's a good way to go. So next we're going to move over to Lila, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about how to respond to customer complaints.
Yeah. So customer complaints, we're talking specifically in the context of social media. Today, about 90% of customers are using social media as a way to engage with their brands that they love. So that statistic blew me out of the water, and basically what this means is that your customers, especially if you are in the millennial and Gen X, if those are your customer market, they are likely going to want to follow you on social media or like your Facebook page, and then when they do use your products or your services and they run into a problem, it's become more common lately for them to message you on Facebook or to blast you on Twitter.
That's the right way to put that, blast you on Twitter.
Yes. And so we're seeing that across the board with all of our clients. It's just an industry trend, and even if you aren't daily updating your social media, you have a profile out there, it's very likely that they are going to send you a message and that they will expect you to respond. And so we've got a few tips that if this does happen to your business, how to go about it. Just because you really want to keep them engaged and you want to keep them loyal, and simply not responding is not the answer.
Right.
Definitely
No.
You may have guessed that one. So yeah, the first recommendation we have is to respond quickly, and do so starting with an apology. Letting them know that you've heard their complaint and that you are working to resolve it. Even if you don't necessarily have a solution right then and there, it's really good to quickly say something so that this person feels like something is being done and they will stop blasting you on other channels.
Yes.
Which just creates the headache
Yeah.
even further.
Because if you don't reply, but then maybe you post content on that channel later, one of the reasons we usually don't recommend scheduling content is because you don't get around to responding to this complaint, but then the tweet that you have auto, in your machine, or the Facebook post you already have set up to post, then goes out an hour later, and then they say you don't have time to they don't understand that you're scheduling, so they say you don't have time to respond to me, but you can be continuing to post, and it looks like you're further ignoring that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And so the second point is to be proactive. Following up with those customers after you said, hey, we're working on this, make sure that you update them once in a while, because people nowadays really expect immediate gratification. They expect that when they have a complaint that there's someone in your team who's going to help them immediately. Often that's not the case for every business. There's not a person on staff who's going to address all social media complaints. So very reasonable to say that this might take a few days, but then make sure that you are proactive and you're checking back in with them, just to keep them calm and to make sure that they feel like they haven't been forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Then general comment is to act like a human.
Yeah.
Most companies have this tendency to get really templated, to more or less like write and bucketed answers and then to paste those in. But social media is a really conversational platform, and it really comes across differently if you start sounding like a robot. So just keep in mind that like using a person's name, it's the one thing that they love to hear. Anytime that you can add personalization to your response, saying, we heard about your problem X, we're looking to solve situation Y, so that they feel like you're not just using another template, they're actually being talked to by a human.
Yeah, and I think you're going to go into this even further, but I see this a lot with, let's say, like an airline, and they have the same, that they just copy and paste the same message over and over again. And even if it literally is someone typing it in, it looks like an auto response, and that's just going to further anger the person.
Yeah, that's exactly my next point, is that using autoresponders wisely, because it's a great system, and there's definitely pros and cons, and you can argue autoresponders both ways. Sending a genuine message like, hey, we've received your message, we're currently out of the office, but we'll get back to you as soon as we're within our business operating hours. Great, definitely have that autoresponder set up. For frequently asked questions, it also really makes sense to have an autoresponder. But in the case of a true complaint or some sort of problem, and if you are just throwing out a templated message like that, that can actually aggravate them even further.
Yeah.
And it would have been better to not have sent a response at all, and waited to have a human interact with that person.
Yeah, there's a Kardashian example of this where it was something along the lines of someone replying to Khloe about her jeans, saying, I wish her jeans were more affordable, like I'm in a hard time right now and I can't afford to purchase these jeans. And you could tell that she either had an autoresponder on, or she was just literally copying and pasting, because she said, so happy you're loving your jeans, like send us a picture and tag us. And the person was like, I literally just told you that I can't afford the product that you're promoting, and you're clearly not even listening. And then, obviously they had to then go and do some damage control and ended up making it up to this person. But in the meantime, it didn't look very well on the brand or the person representing the brand.
Yeah. That's a crazy example. And that it's, if you do have an autoresponder, I think it makes sense, and tell me what you guys think, to make it really clear that this is an automatic response, and have some sort of way to say, if none of these options make sense for you, like click here and sort of get to talk to
like
a
you
human.
said, we're out of the office at this time, like we will get back to you in the morning, like something along those lines. Like we respond. I've seen a lot of companies who say, like, we respond between this time and this time on these days if it's outside of this. It's almost like a voicemail. No one thinks when they call and they get your voicemail that it's you on the other end. They know it's somebody that they're going to hear back from later.
Right.
Yeah. Setting expectations clearly, saying, if it is between these hours, we'll get back to you within 2 hours, or whatever it might be, as long as you put it out there for people. The next one is to show some empathy. I think that, like we've just been talking about, these templates, they're written and they maybe have a thank you and so sorry, but sometimes, like you just said, the story is actually really heartbreaking, and there is a reason to tell them what the situation is, or to provide an extra layer of detail, or to just show some emotion.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to represent your brand and speak on behalf of your team that you are really sorry for that happening.
Yeah. I've definitely had that happen. I'm not somebody who complains very often, but I had something happen where I was like, okay, I'm reaching out and telling you that this is a problem, and here's why this is a problem, and it's a very unique situation, and I didn't get a lot of help from them. It was just unfortunate, but it's a perfect example of, you have to think of, like, this may seem like a common problem to you. Maybe you do get either this complaint, or maybe it's a service issue, who knows, whatever it is, and maybe you've seen it before and you know how to solve it, but to this person, it's the first time it's happened to them, or it's the second time it's happened. You want to make sure that you've got that empathy of, like, I hear you as a person, I am also a person who's talking to you.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we address that as humans, like we said before.
Something I see a lot is that this might not be the first way they're trying to contact you, and so it's particularly important, maybe if you only run this side of the business, or to pay attention to the whole way, your customer service as a whole. But a lot of things I see online are, I've called the number on your website, I fill out the form, and now I'm trying this social media website, I still haven't heard from you.
Yeah.
So keeping in mind that, like, they may have tried to reach you other ways, and that's only going to further aggravate them if this is now their third way trying to contact you.
Yeah, you're doing a really great job of leading in. Because the next one is to stay consistent. Most people do see their social media customers as the same thing as if you were to fill out a customer support form. These are people who are loyal to your brand, or they are considering a purchase and they need help figuring out where to go next. So giving them the same time and dedication as you would with traditional customer outlets, like even someone calling your business should be treated the same way as someone who's reaching out to you on social media. That's just how the world is changing. It's a very conversational platform, so they should be greeted like they were to walk into your office. How do you handle that situation? Maybe that's a similar avenue where your social media should also be managed, and prepare those people to check in on those channels. And so the final point here out of all the 8 is to move the conversation private as quickly as possible, because social media is completely public. We're finding that Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit are the most common platforms where people are going to be complaining, and all of them are very public channels. But they do have a private section, especially, I definitely know for Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah,
Reddit does too.
Yeah, Reddit does too?
Yeah.
Good. So acknowledge the comment to them publicly, and let them know that you have either already messaged them to take things private, or to have them fill out some sort of form on your website, or have them message your business, so that that conversation to the outsider who has nothing to do with the complaint feels like it progressed, and that situation has been resolved now. Instead of playing the he said she said game in public, where you can have a lot of other people
dirty laundry all over social media.
It also protects you and your brand reputation, because mistakes happen, and maybe there was a mistake made in this instance. And instead of there being more public details about that mistake you made, we can kind of stop the communication publicly there, where they just said they had an issue, and then we can resolve it somewhere else. Always respond publicly. I think that's an important aspect about it too, because even if you did respond privately, if there are a bunch of comments that say all these issues and it doesn't look like anybody's responded, then on the same thing with your reputation, it looks like you don't care. Even if you are responding to them privately, it's still important to let everyone know publicly that you've addressed this.
Yeah, definitely. And a good reason, if you feel uncomfortable asking people to go private, it is for the customer also a really a reason for them to go private, is because they want to hide their information. You may want to say, like, from a customer support standpoint, like, hey, we'd like to get your email and your phone number and whatever the serial number or purchase order number. So let's take this private, and that's a reason for them to want to do that, and stop putting the situation on blast. So Yeah, in conclusion, even though you may not necessarily be on all of those channels, if you do have them, make it part of your practice for someone on your team to check in there frequently. They do all have notification systems set up too, so you could just make sure that enough people are being notified and anytime a business gets messaged.
Good advice all around. It's one of those stickier situations that we don't like, addressing, but these are good ways to get ahead of it and to not, find a sticky situation stickier. So thank you so much for joining us. As always, this is Social Media Help Desk. We do this every week, 12:30 on Tuesdays at Pacific Standard Time. Thank you guys both so much for coming and joining us. If you have any further questions, please reach out. You can either comment here on this Facebook Live. You can also email us at tips@kwsmdigital.com, or we have a YouTube channel. If you're interested in other things that have happened in the past, we give this kind of advice all the time, and we keep an ongoing log of this information. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you next week.